inadequate to be able to do this job of sharing my thoughts on the book. Since I was asked, and Tikender has been a very old comrade and friend of ours for a long time. And we worked together through the university, through the elections for the Shimla Municipal Corporation. And the issue of how the cities are planned. I mean, all that I can say is my experience is to live in a city and suffer what is happening in the city. I mean, that is the perspective with which I can approach the entire issue. The opening remarks that Tikender made are actually, I mean, they summarize the issue that right now cities are also part of the overall development of the society, socio-economic development of the society that is taking place the uh, under the neoliberal reform trajectory. To put it in a nutshell, what is neoliberalism? Neoliberalism is essentially the maximization of profits. That is its objective. Now, how you do it, it doesn't matter as long as you're able to maximize your profits. The easiest way is to usurp public utilities and public needs and privatize them, which is precisely whether when it starts with water, electricity, power, transport, and then it goes into your common spaces, your parks, your entertainment areas, or your bridges. Every one of them is to be privatized in order to maximize your profits. If this is the logic, then cities by themselves, every single urban conglomerate today is a twin city. You have the slums and the poor on the one hand, which are overwhelmingly larger in population than the well-to-do and your gated communities. So you have this dichotomy within every city today. And the Asia's largest slum, I mean, I think second largest in the world after the favelas in Brazil, in Bombay. And this sort of a duality that exists in the cities is completely antithetical to the concept of urbanization. And urbanization necessarily means the inclusiveness of people who are living in the city. Now, instead, you have an exclusion. And gated communities is the worst thing that we have seen, let's say, in terms of safety. But the people and COVID taught every one of us that the gated communities, your household help won't arrive, and then you were lost. And that's exactly what happened in Bombay when you had that flooding that happened. South Mumbai is fairly well off, a higher place, so it was not flooded. But the other areas from which your daily domestic help comes, from your milk to your vegetables to your household work, all of them were under floodwaters, and it affected. So it's nobody can be insulated in a city. That is the basic point. If that is the case, then how do we work towards this common good? We had a lot of this debate when the UPA government was being formed in 2004. And then we had this urban renewal, what do you call it? Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission. That continued till 2014, and much of these places, the emphasis was on providing a common facilities which are state-owned facilities for public good. I mean, it's a common good for them, whether it's transportation, whether it's various other things. That's why you find many of these buses still. All these low ceiling buses in Delhi that we use were all part of that entire program. But then that stopped at 2014, and as was the want of this government, anything to be named after Jawaharlal Nehru has to be changed. So they brought in a new acronym called Amrit, I think. Atal something, Atal Mission for something, and then we know what happened. But the entire moving logic in terms of urbanization has been this profit maximization, and that is now going in a in a menacing way in most of these cities. And the smart city concept is actually driven by this agenda. The engine for the smart city is to propertize the public good. Whatever be the common space that you have in cities, and from that to earn your profits. The best smart city is the one that is making the highest amount of money. Now this is not, I mean, basically it is not conducive to human habitation, this sort of an approach. If this has to change, and now this is also accompanied by, this urge for profitization is also accompanied by devastation of your climate, environment. Now you see what's happening in Andamans. You're just raising forests in order to say that we want to develop that area. We've seen what's happened in Joshimath. And today, God, I don't know, because I can't say Marx help us, but God help us. What are you want to say? What do you want to say? You suddenly find that now lithium has been discovered on a fault line in Kashmir. Now imagine if you want to commercially exploit that lithium from that fault line, what a devastating effect that it will have. And all of us know, I mean, it's common knowledge that Himalayas is the youngest mountain range in the world. The plates are still moving, hitting each other. So it's a very earthquake prone area. We've seen what's happened in Turkey and Syria now. I mean, and it's phenomenal. Of that. I mean, we know, I mean, whatever little knowledge we have, put it to use properly. So with all these things here, what our experience tells us, even in the latest Niti Aayog's ranking, I think in terms of urban, Kerala ranks #1, is right at the top. Now, what did we learn out of sheer experience? When the first allocations were being made in the government led by the communists for people's welfare, saying that for road building, rural roads so much, for this thing so much, etc., etc., and the budget. When that money was going down to the villages themselves came and said, we don't want a road here. What we want is wells. There's no water. We want drinking water. Then it struck us that saying that why are we taking those decisions of what they want? Why don't we let them decide on it? That was born the entire concept of people's planning. What we have in Kerala today is that you get the feedback from the local bodies, which are democratically elected bodies at the village level, at the local level, and they tell you what is their requirement. And instead of going through that entire process in this bureaucracy, what we said the best would be to give financial allocations and let them decide what they want. And that's exactly what happened. How it started. We started it in Bengal, nearly a decade before the 74th Amendment, Panchayati Raj, when decentralization of this thing, and that has been of a tremendous. It was a learning process for us as well, and it's also a learning process for all of us. That when the local communities, their democratically elected bodies, they decide what is needed for them. That is the best way in which this sort of a integration is possible between the various different sections. So what is required today? It's part of the larger struggle, of course. We can't really isolate the process of urbanization from the rest of the struggle, is to actually bring back onto the agenda the demand for urban commons, and for the state intervention, the state playing the vital role in providing the basic infrastructural facilities in the cities. The role of the state has to be brought back. And the role of the state being brought back is also, it has to be also democratic. The state itself is also the biggest instrument for profit making, to put it in a little crude manner, it's basically an instrument for looting, which is what is happening. So the democratic control over that state, that has to be ensured, which means your local body government, local governance, etc., that has to be strengthened. Instead, we find greater centralization that is taking place today. Instead of decentralization of power, we have greater centralization. That has to be resisted and reversed. That is one. Second is to have very, very stringent laws, conditions, norms, rules, whatever you may call it, in order to protect your environment and for climate. Not to devastate our climate change. What's happening to our Aravalis here? What further, in the next few decades, I don't know what will be the state of Delhi and the thing, the way you are ravaging with those Aravalli Hills here. And this sort of an urge, with the driving urge, saying that I want to promote religious tourism, so therefore I'll dig tunnels in the Himalayas to promote I mean, Uttarakhand and Joshipat was all the Char Dham, that whole thing of promoting that religious tourism was a major factor in actually creating the havoc that it's created. So these priorities have to be decided upon. It's a long struggle. I mean, it's not an easy one to do it, but to make people comprehend the problems that are involved, that is very, very important. Apart from the question of access to public utilities, education, health. COVID has shown us what devastation, I mean, lack of public health can make. And God forbid, in any of our urban centers now, if any pandemic breaks out, need not be something like COVID, but even an ordinary, malaria, ordinary typhoid, dysentery, impossible for us to really contain it and minimize the impact to a certain area because of the lack of the public health facilities. So these are areas on which public awareness should be built up. And we will do our role, whatever bit we can, but I think this sort of work will be useful and very helpful. And I think this should be properly communicated to the people and taken to audiences beyond, academic and intellectual circles, actually to hold such general body meetings in local areas, explaining what can be done and what should be done. And that is something that sort of a work which we can help, but then which you should take up. I think that is of that's very important. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and sorry for sharing my random, unrelated thoughts, because living in a city, it's always random. I mean, you never know what you're thinking at what time. It all depends on what is come on top of you at that particular moment. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.